Well, hello and welcome to the Soft UK podcast. I'm Kate Hart, the Engagement Officer for the charity Soft, which is a support organisation for families affected by trisomy 13 and 18. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Raliene and Josh Banks, the bereaved parents of Faith, who was diagnosed with trisomy 13 in 2022. Raliene and Josh are joining us all the way from the USA, and they've kindly agreed to share their journey with us. So, welcome, guys.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Fantastic. So, could you both start by telling us a little bit about yourselves and a little bit about your family, please?
Okay, about me. I was actually born and raised in the island of Guam, which is in the middle of the Pacific, if you're not familiar with it. I joined the Air Force, and I've spent the past 15 years as an Air Force pilot. And I met Josh overseas while we were on a deployment. We spent 3 years apart before actually moving in with each other. And got pregnant with Faith last year. Found out I was pregnant on Valentine's Day. It was a big surprise, a very good surprise. But then we found out a couple months later that she had trisomy 13. And we found that out via NIPT. And we got our results on a Sunday via email. So it wasn't ideal, but we eventually got to see our doctor and they confirmed the results.
And it's actually right around this time last year that we found out about the results. So I think maybe like last week and a half ago.
Okay. Well, thanks for that introduction. Josh, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Yeah,
Cool.
so I am a Navy brat. I kind of am from all over. I grew up mostly, I guess, in Connecticut in the United States. And then from there, went to University of South Carolina, joined the Air Force. And that's how I met Ray while we were in the Middle East. And then from there, kind of like she already alluded to, we went to go have our first baby, and we ended up with the NIPT results for trisomy 13. We didn't know anything about it. We knew really only Down syndrome. And so we started doing all of our research and had no idea what to expect. And that's how we found Soft. That's how we found a lot of different resources and led us to our journey here. And then when everything was kind of confirmed, we were able to go visit the Soft conference, which by Kismet happened to be last year in Roanoke, which is only a couple hours away from where we were living in Washington, D.C. So
so that's the Soft US conference.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And did you find that a useful thing to be a part of? You were obviously still expecting at the time, Raylene?
Right, I was about 6 months pregnant. And up until going to the Soft conference, we kind of only knew what we read about trisomy 13 online and what our doctors were telling us. So we were very fortunate that the conference was close to us because we got to go and we got to meet the families and we got to see the children and we got to hear their perspective, which is something that our doctors just couldn't tell us. We actually had one of our doctors tell us that no trisomy 13 baby ever lived past 1 year old. And this doctor told us this actually after we came from the Soft conference. So we knew that that wasn't true. But the medical community only knows what they know from the textbooks. I don't think they really have that perspective of raising a child with a rare trisomy. So meeting the families was just a game changer.
Amazing. And so you've alluded to the medical doctor's sort of opinion. How was the news delivered to you in the beginning? Okay, I know you said it was via email, but presumably you spoke to someone after that in person or over the phone. I mean, how did they deliver the news and how did they handle this, huge change in what you were expecting?
I think we maybe had a unique or somewhat unique experience. They did a really good job. So we got this news delivered to us at Inova Fairfax in Virginia, and they did an outstanding job, in my opinion, of just presenting the facts and not trying to push one way or the other, which I know can be a lot of other people's experiences. Is, hey, your baby has trisomy 13. We'll schedule the abortion now or lots of, just gruesome, but they just kind of gave us the facts of, yes, we believe your daughter has trisomy 13. We can't confirm that through anything other than to do amniocentesis. We didn't want to go through that, but we knew that she was going to have hypoplastic left heart and that she was going to have some brain abnormalities and some other physical abnormalities that we were needing to prep for. But they didn't push us one way or the other. They just kind of laid out our options and let us decide what we wanted to do.
Yeah, and our experience was also unique because of the way our insurance worked. We had to go to different facilities for different things. So the facility where we had the NIPT done was not the same facility that did our ultrasound that confirmed the trisomy 13. And we also had a genetic counselor who was at a different facility, all because of insurance. But our genetic counselor was the one who talked us through what amniocentesis was and what are the pros and cons, and asked us the right questions so that we could come to our own decision on what we wanted to do with testing and what we wanted to do further down the road.
Amazing. So it sounds like it was a good experience. And then added to that, you had that amazing opportunity actually to go and meet children living with trisomy at the SOFT conference, which, yeah, not a lot of people would have that chance. So yeah. So when was an abortion or termination for medical reasons, was that ever something you would consider? I mean, some families have these chats before they have a baby, and they kind of know, or they think they know which way they'll go. Did you guys consider it, or what did that journey look like?
I think we were along the lines of, we want to explore every option. We went into it with an open mind, and we wanted to learn as much as we could about each option, because in the end, we really just wanted to make the best decision for our daughter and for our family. And I don't think we could have done that without exploring the option of termination for medical reasons. So we did ask what, we just kind of tried to paint a picture of what each option would look like. We asked our genetic counselor and our doctors, would our daughter be in any pain? And the answer that they gave us was, we really don't know. So there are ways to treat the pain, which is what they told us. So if your daughter is in pain, then we can treat it, but we really don't know what is going to happen until she's actually born.
We wanted to explore all the options of things that were going to treat her abnormalities. So again, with like the left hypoplastic left heart, was that going to be operable? And so we went through the fetal echocardiograms to go, hey, do we think that this will actually be able to be something that can be fixed? And that was undetermined until she was born. They kind of said, hey, we won't know from the EKG what to expect. So we just kind of had to do a waiting game.
And I think that was a common theme, was when we would ask what would happen in the future. Nobody knew, and nobody can predict the future. Even after she was born, the first day that she was born, they did an echocardiogram on her to take a look at her heart, and they told us, hey, her heart still looks like she has left hypoplastic heart syndrome, but the heart can change in a couple of days, so why don't we wait a couple of days and reassess? So it was a lot of taking it day by day, which for us, we like to plan. We're planners, and we're always thinking about what are we going to do 10, 20 years down the line. And what this experience really taught us was how to live day by day and how to live in the moment and appreciate every single day that we had with our baby, because we just didn't know how long we would have with her.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think it's a common theme that we hear from people is how uncomfortable that uncertainty is and that lack of control. So I think it makes a lot of sense that you guys explored every option and just had all the facts and could make your mind up based on the information that was given to you. Josh, could you tell us a little bit about what it was like supporting Raliene during the pregnancy as both a dad to be and, her husband?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tough question, because it's from the the man's perspective, the dad's perspective, uh, you feel like you're supposed to be able to protect your family, and there's not a lot you can do once you receive that diagnosis. So I felt a little bit out of control, like I didn't know what to do. So I had to find the things that I could control. I had to find the things that I could do so I could support her in helping in any way that I could that she wasn't able to do, or that I was there for her to be able to grieve. We kind of both just told each other that we were going to give each other grace through this whole process because we had no idea how each other was going to react to that. So from a dad's perspective, it kind of shatters your world a little bit, and you have no way to protect your family in the way that you would traditionally think, like, I'm going to go protect my family and I'm going to do the things, be the provider, be the hunter gatherer, back to our roots of that type of mentality, right? Where you're the protector, and you can't do anything like that. So you have to find the things that you can control. That was at least my perspective. So I had to find ways to be able to take care of myself, but also be able to take care of my family in any way that I could, which meant helping her be supportive for her health and for Faith's health, and going to all the meetings and doing all the research that I could to find out what was going on. An example of that would be when the cardiologist came in and was like, hey, what do you understand about what's going on with the baby's heart? I was able to explain like the entire thing, and she kind of went, okay, you have a pretty good handle on it, I guess.
He did a lot of research, a lot of research, a lot of learning beforehand. We were both sitting down, like watching YouTube videos of the anatomy of the heart, so that we knew that when we went into an appointment, we would understand what the doctor was telling us.
That's
so
brilliant.
He did a really great job at learning everything he possibly could.
So that was the only way that I knew how to take care of my family. So I had to do what I could, which was in my control.
Thank you. I think that's such a natural response as a man or father. And you've made such an important point there as well, in that you needed to take care of yourself as well, which doesn't often get said, but it is, how can you look after the people you care for if you're not looking after yourself as well? So really important point to raise as well. So could we talk about the rest of the pregnancy with Faith? I mean, how did it all go? And, what was that journey like?
The physical portion of the pregnancy was very easy for me. I didn't have any morning sickness. I wasn't very uncomfortable. Faith was very small. She ended up having intrauterine growth restriction. She was in the less than 1 percentile for size. So when she was born, she was 3 pounds, 4 ounces, and 16 inches. So my belly didn't get as big as a typical woman's would who was pregnant. Actually, when I was about 6 months pregnant, one of my bosses thought that I was around 3, and he just was so surprised that I was at 6. The physical portion of the pregnancy, it was unexpected. I was expecting to have a lot of issues. It was more of the emotional side that was really difficult. But like Josh had alluded to earlier, we wanted to be able to control and to do what we could. So in my mind, I was Faith's life support. And that meant that I needed to take care of myself as well as I possibly could. So I continued working out. I cut gluten out of my diet. I had genetic testing done on myself, and I found out that I have the celiac gene. I don't necessarily have celiac disease, but I was just overly cautious because I wanted to give Faith as much of an opportunity as I possibly could. So that's where I focused all of my energy. And I knew that in order to take care of her, I would have to take care of my mental health. So thinking positive thoughts, getting counseling through the pregnancy to be able to endure it spiritually and mentally and physically was really a game changer for me.
Amazing. Yeah, you've raised again some really important points, that you need to be in a good place to be able to face what you were facing, and to be able to be there for Faith, and it's just such a lovely way of putting it, that you were taking care of her as her one and only life support at that point. It sounds like you really bonded with Faith during the pregnancy and really fell in love with her over those months.
I did. Actually, yesterday we were at dinner and I was eating a salad and I was telling Josh, I really miss eating with Faith, because when I was pregnant, every time I would eat a meal, in my mind, I would imagine myself actually feeding her. And now when I eat, it's just for me. So I miss being able to feed my daughter with my meals.
And I'm sure those kicks and all that movement, although she was small, you probably did feel that you always had a constant companion with you, which is so
Right.
special.
Oh yeah, I miss her so much.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And could you tell us a bit about her birth and the day she arrived?
Oh my goodness. Do you want to tell that?
I mean, it was two different perspectives, I think. So
Yeah.
you probably have to get the story from both of us, really. We were expecting to deliver on the coming Monday, and we went in on Thursday for a pre-checkup just to make sure everything was ready and get ready for the Monday delivery. And we went in for that last ultrasound, and they realized that the amniotic fluid had decreased enough that Faith was going to be at risk. So our OBGYN had always said, hey, have a bag pack, take it with you, just in case they tell you, hey, you're going to deliver today. And we thought of all the times that we weren't going to need a bag, it was going to be this one, because worst case scenario, they were going to go, hey, looks like things aren't going as planned, but we're going to deliver Monday anyway, so not that big of a deal. We were supposed to induce that Monday. Well, we got to that checkup and they went, you guys aren't going home, we're delivering tomorrow, or tonight is really what they were saying. We're going to induce tonight with an expected delivery of tomorrow morning. And so we went, oh, that was not what we had expected. So we went into get everything ready. Luckily, her parents were in town.
They were visiting from Guam.
So they got to pack up stuff for us.
Yeah, we were on the phone FaceTiming with them, trying to tell them where things were and getting all their clothes, getting all of our stuff into a suitcase. And driving in Guam is very different than driving here in the United States. So they were very afraid to drive, so they got in an Uber.
We had a car. We had the car anyway, so they wouldn't have been able to take our car.
But they got an Uber and gave us all of our stuff at the hospital.
So then we spent a long time in the waiting room, essentially waiting to start the induction, waiting for the induction to take hold. And so again, it was just a waiting game. She couldn't eat, and so I was trying not to eat as well because I didn't want to eat in front of her.
To put it in perspective, my appointment was at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I had eaten breakfast. And when they told us I was going to deliver, they told me to not eat anything. And we didn't start the induction until about 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And once they started the induction, they said, hey, you can't eat anything because, we might have to switch to a C-section. So don't eat anything. But the induction didn't go well. They had me strapped up to a monitor and they were monitoring Faith's heart. And with every contraction, Faith's heart would drop, her heart rate would drop. And these were contractions that I couldn't even feel. So the nurse came in and she said, hey, we have to stop the induction process because you're having small contractions and the baby's heart is dropping. So when you have the really big ones, we don't think she's going to make it. So I was asked if I wanted to do a C-section. And we said, yes, let's do the C-section. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can for Faith. So I couldn't eat anything. And we had decided to wait until the next day to do the C-section. I think at this point it was 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. And once they stopped the induction, Faith was doing okay, but they wanted to monitor her for a little bit longer before they allowed me to eat.
And so, sorry, real quick, one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that Ray was able to meet Faith in case anything happened. We wanted Ray to be alive, or not alive. We definitely wanted her to be alive. We wanted her to be awake,
yes,
for Faith being there. So that was one of our goals for the care, was to make sure that she met in case Faith passed quickly after birth. So that was another reason that we were trying to schedule and get everything squared away, so that we didn't have to go through an emergency C-section where Ray was going to have to be put to sleep for the C-section. So that was part of what was going on as well.
But as we were waiting, after the injection had stopped, after we were waiting for the next day to do the C-section, Faith's heart rate dropped again, and it didn't come back. So when it didn't come back, they immediately put me on a different table to wheel me to the operating room. And at this point, I was very, very afraid, because it looked like it would have to be an emergency C-section because she was in distress. So they put me on a table, they wheel me over to the operating room. They get me strapped up to the heart rate monitors again, and then you can hear Faith's heartbeat. Her heartbeat came back. So my doctor came to me and she said, "Do you hear that? That's your baby's heartbeat. We don't have to do an emergency C-section, but we do have to do the C-section right now." So they told me to hunch my back over, and they gave me the anesthesia that I needed, and had the C-section from there. I looked around me in the operating room, and one thing I remember is that the entire team was female, from the OBGYN to the anesthesiologist, all the nurses, they were all female. And then I see Josh walk into the room, and he's the only male in the all-female team, which I thought was really cool, because you don't see that very often.
She got to know everything that was going on, by the way. I had to be kept outside of the operating room, so I had no idea whether Faith's heart rate had come back, whether we were doing emergency C-section, in which case I wasn't going to be allowed in the room. I was in a waiting room, just like
pacing back and forth.
I was sitting down, but I felt like I wanted to pace back and forth. It was probably the scariest experience that I've had.
But the C-section went really, really quickly. I just remember, for me, feeling completely out of control. What I didn't know about a C-section is that you can shake pretty uncontrollably, and that's what happened with me. So from the waist down, I couldn't feel anything, couldn't move anything, and then from the waist up, I was just constantly shaking. And I didn't know if my baby was going to be alive. It was the most terrifying feeling in the world for me. It was the most out of control that I had ever felt. But then I see a nurse bring a little baby across the room, and it's super white, just like as white as a wall. And she had jet black hair, and she was covered in like all sorts of slimy stuff. So it was, it was a baby being born. And as she walked Faith across the room, she showed her to me for about 2 seconds. And then she took her over to the table where the NICU doctor was. Josh left my side and got to see Faith, and he would go back and forth and give me updates. He told me she was breathing on her own, and he told me about different things that we had thought that were abnormal at birth. We thought that she had an umphalocele, but then the doctor said they thought it was a hernia. Long story short, it actually was an umphalocele, but he was giving me updates. And they finally bundled her up. They put a little oxygen mask on her, and they brought her to me, and they put her right here. And I looked at her, and she was a little bit too close, so I couldn't focus. I couldn't see her. I asked them to back her up, and when they backed her up, she opened her eyes, which she didn't do very often. And she looked right at me, and Josh was tearing up. And I don't think I had the mental capacity to tear up, because I was just kind of in shock that my baby was here and she was alive, and we got to meet her.
And so then I had to split duties back and forth in the hospital, because she was going to recovery, but Faith was going to the NICU. So I had to bounce back and forth and kind of give updates back and forth to Ray.
Yeah, I didn't get to see her for about 8 hours. They put me in recovery. So while I was in recovery, Josh was texting me and sending me pictures, sending me video of the baby.
It sounds like it went a lot better than it could have, and it sounds like just meeting her was such a joy for you both. So thank you for sharing that story. It was really beautiful. I just wanted to ask what gestation was she born at? How many weeks was she?
36 weeks, 4 days.
Okay, okay. So she made it quite far into the pregnancy. She did really well.
She did, yes.
And then tell us a bit about her little life. We'd love to know about the days from there and tell us what she was like.
So she spent 7 days in the NICU. We got to do all sorts of things with her. She got to meet her grandparents, both sets of her grandparents. We got to bathe her. We got to hold her, give her hand hugs, lots of different things. She had definitely had some issues with apnea. So we were trying to work through those. They were terrifying to us when she would just stop breathing.
Yeah, that was the one thing I didn't really think about or expect was apnea. And looking back, I wish that I had known more about it and I had known what to expect. We got to sleep in the same room as Faith. Our NICU they were very kind to us, and they moved us into a double room, and they moved beds into her room for us. So we actually got to sleep there. And I just remember waking up to her alarms going off, which was probably the second. Now, I don't know if that was more terrifying than the actual delivery or not. Both of them were just so scary to wake up to the alarms and know that your baby wasn't breathing, and going outside and trying to find a nurse to help you revive her. I wish that I had known to expect that and researched it a little bit more, but we got to do a photo shoot with her. There's a nonprofit company here in the US. I don't know if the UK has it too, but they're called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. It's a service that's completely free. You get a photographer to come in and they'll take photos of your baby and your family for terminally ill babies. So we got a photo shoot on her 3rd day of life. And when she passed, the same photographer came back and got to take pictures with her too. But we tried to do everything in those 7 days that we wanted to do in her whole life. And there's no way you could pack it all in, but we made sure that she watched American football. So Josh watched an American football game with her. And my interest, I am a huge pageantry fan. So we watched the 2018 Miss Universe together, and we read her stories. We read her the book Love You Forever. And we still read that story to her every single night.
And we followed some triathlon stuff as well while we were there, because that's a big part of my life is triathlon. So we tried to follow that as well while she was there, and just talk to her about all the different things that were part of her life, even though she might not get to meet them. So our cats and her family back in Guam, and just tried to share things with her that we didn't know if she was going to get to expect or not, or get to see or not. So
sounds like you did a lot with her in that very special week together. So yeah. Beautiful and very moving, guys. So lovely that you've shared Faith's life with us. So thank you. And then could you tell us a bit about how you've coped since losing her? I mean, she's your first and only child. I mean, I know again it's a really tough question to ask, but if you could both share a bit about that, please.
It's not easy. The first month especially, I think the first couple of months, you're just, at least for me, it was kind of like I was living in a fog. Like each day that went by was the same day. But as time went on, the waves of grief, as people call it, lessened. And one of our counselors described grief very well. She said, grief is like a heavy blanket that you put on and you never take it off. It never goes away. But over time, as you walk around with it, you get stronger and you learn how to carry this heavy blanket. And I think that's a really good analogy, because that's exactly what it feels like. It's never going to go away.
Mhm.
I'm always going to miss my baby. But each day I feel like it does get a little bit easier to carry that load. And we were on another Zoom call with a group that does grief counseling, and they told us that people process grief in one of two ways. You're either a person that really feels it and you process it emotionally, or you are a doer and you do things to help you with your grief. And I think we fall into the doer category. We have we've done a 5K in honor of Faith. We made, are you wearing the hat? Show them the hat.
Well, this
We've
is a
made,
different one. This is
these are, so if you look at this hat,
Oh,
it's 13, and then that's the Trisomy 13.
We Lucky
the
Few with a
chevrons.
Trisomy 13, and then on the back it says Journey for Faith.
So we made these hats, and we sell them, and the profits that we make, we donate that to Soft. So we created a first line of hats, and those have all sold out. This is actually our second line of hats. And our plan for this is that each year we will do a line of hats around Trisomy Awareness Month. And each set of hats will honor a different baby who had Trisomy 13. So this one, if you want to show them the initials.
This one has Landon Jacob on it, LJBC. So the funny story or the interesting story behind that was one of the guys that I reached out to, or that reached out to me, was like, "Hey, I'd love to help you with the hats." Had no idea what our story was, and when I shared the story with him, he was already willing to help. But then he was like, "Hey, I actually lost my son back in 2009 to trisomy 13. He had lived for 58 days, I want to say." But so this hat was honoring his son, which is Landon Jacob. And so we're just trying to each year trying to help another family or share another family's journey with that. So that's kind of our goal with that. I think going along with the doers thing, I think we just kind of dove back into the things that we thought would help. So my kind of mantra for me was to improve, to inspire, and to empower. And so for me, I was trying to improve myself through what I used to do, which was endurance sports, which I still do those. So I made goals for myself for this year to try and qualify for the Boston Marathon and to qualify for 70.3 World Championships and ultimately Ironman Kona for the first year of Faith having been with us, and use her as the motivation to get to those things. And then through that, trying to inspire others to know that whatever they're going through, somebody else is going through something as well, and that they can share their journey as well as, and that helps with the healing process.
Yeah, and we call what we're trying to do Journey for Faith, and that's what's on the hat. Faith taught us to not put things off, to do things that you're afraid to do things that you thought you never could do. My journey for Faith was competing in pageantry. So about 5-6 weeks after I delivered her, I competed in the Mrs. Virginia International pageant, and I ended up winning that. So now I'm going to the Mrs. International pageant, which is in July, and I'll get to talk about faith. I'll get to talk about trisomy and educate the judges and the audience about this. So that's kind of how we both are doing the same thing in very different ways.
Amazing. And what a platform to be able to educate and create awareness. But it's also very apparent that you guys are feeling it emotionally as well. That comes across so obviously. So it seems to me like a combination of the emotional and the practical doing side of it. So yeah, don't discount that. And your blog, Raliene, can you tell us a little bit about that? Is that something you started during pregnancy, or is it something you've put together since Faith passed away?
So my blog started in 2017, and it was just kind of a hodgepodge of all these things I'm interested in. I'm interested in cooking, so there's a whole bunch of recipes on there, mostly vegetarian because he doesn't really eat meat. So I had to learn how to make vegetarian foods and to like them. So I've posted recipes that I like, that he likes as well. I'm also, like I mentioned before, I'm a pilot, and aviation is not very common to women. So my blog features different female pilots, and I share their stories online. So that's kind of how it started out. And then when we found out about Faith, I started to write about her. And I also compiled a bunch of resources that other families can use who are going through the trisomy journey. So I am a person who likes to learn. So I put together a little summary of everything that I learned about trisomy with all of the resources listed in there. So you can actually go into the article and go to the source documents to learn more about trisomy. And as we started to go through our journey, and after we lost Faith, we thought of starting a nonprofit. But as I started to look at all the different nonprofits out there that benefit trisomy, there are a lot. So there's already a lot of people doing things to help others. So I think what we're trying to focus on is to pull those resources together to distribute that knowledge to families who are either expecting or have a child with trisomy, and to give them one place to go to say, hey, here are all the different nonprofits that can help you. Here's a place to go for grief support. Here's a place to go if you want to throw a birthday for your child. Here's how you can get some funding for that. So that's another section of my blog. And I don't know if I'm going to separate the trisomy portion from everything else. I may in the future, but right now it's all together. So it's a really good picture of who I am as a person.
Yeah, and Faith's part of that, isn't she? So you wouldn't want to really separate it out because she's part of you and always will be. She's part of your story.
She definitely is. She's such a big part of our lives. Even though she was only here for 7 days, it's amazing how something can change you this much.
Well, we'll definitely put a link to your blog in the podcast blurb so that people can have a look and read up on some of the things you've mentioned. And I must say thanks too for the mention of Soft UK on there under the resources. I noticed that. So thanks for giving us a shout out as well. Appreciate it. So yeah, just in summary, as we start to wrap up, thank you so much both for your time with us today. And I just wondered if before we ended off, you would like to share a message or anything that you've got to say to our listeners today. And Josh, I wondered if we could start with you, please.
Sure. I think what we learned through this experience is that every life has value. So regardless of how big or small, they can all have an impact. And it's important to support everyone on their journey as they go through any type of tragedy. But for sure, no matter what decisions someone makes about their journey with trisomy, it's important that they're supported and that they have a community of people that can support them. Because I think the biggest thing that I learned is the community aspect of this has just been overwhelming. I've always kind of been a little bit of a loner and like, I can do this on my own. I don't really need anybody else. I do triathlon, which is training all on your own basically for the most part. And I had to really find community through that as well. That community really banded together to help me heal and help us heal. So I think those are kind of the two biggest takeaways for me and kind of how I've grown through the experience.
Thank you.
And for me, I just think that dealing with a trisomy or any type of illness for your unborn baby that is deemed life-limiting, or what some people would call incompatible with life, it's very challenging, and there are no right answers to your decisions. So what I like to tell other parents who are going through the same thing, who reach out to me, is that whatever decision you make for your child is the right one. If you're making it with love, you're not going to make the wrong. Families really understand that, and they don't go back and regret and say, what if? And I find myself sometimes thinking, what if we just chose comfort care? What if we just chose to terminate? Like, what if? I have to remind myself of my own advice that we made the best decision we could with the information, considering our values and considering our family. So I have to be okay with it. And once I talk myself into it, I am okay at the end of the day.
I don't think you'll ever get rid of the what ifs. The what ifs
Yeah.
are always going to be there. Hey, what if we had done this differently? What if we had, but in the end, if you have that sound decision making and use that as your basis, then I think in the end you'll be able to counteract the what ifs with the, hey, this is why we've made the decisions and this is what we did. And supporting each other, I think, is another key. I think we felt more like we were two people kind of building our lives together, but we were still able to just live on our own if we needed to, but we really supported each other through this and gave each other grace again throughout that of, hey, we're not going to be the same, but we're going to come back stronger in the end. But right now we need to help each other heal. So
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Yeah, your strength's really amazing, and I think a lot of people will take comfort from listening to your story today. So thank you so much for sharing it.
Thank you for allowing us to share faith.
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So we hope that this conversation has been informative and enlightening to our listeners. And if you want to learn anything more about trisomy 13 or 18, or you need support, please visit our website at soft.org.uk. And whether you're an expectant parent, a bereaved parent, a family member, or a professional seeking information or support, SOFT is here for you. So please reach out, and our contact details can be found in the podcast below. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to speaking again.